Welcome back. I have a very special guest today, a guest who is responsible for so much of what you love about the Lizzie Bennet Diaries and so much about what I love about the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, and I'm very excited to have her here today, someone whose face you may not be as familiar with, but whose jokes you are very familiar with. My name is Ashley Clements.
And my name is Margaret Dunlap.
And this is the Look Back Diaries. Yay, Margaret's here. Thank you for being here, Margaret.
It's so nice for you to have me. Thank you.
To further introduce Margaret, Margaret was one of the three writers from the beginning. Margaret and Rachel and Bernie were writing the show before, I existed. I didn't even exist. They hadn't even 3D printed me yet. and then became co-executive producer, which in like the terms of writer world titles is like the second highest, right? I did that right.
I was super fancy. Yes, and Jay Bushman was also there from the beginning. He was not yet scripting for us yet.
That's true. He was doing the transmedia, and I haven't had him on the show yet, and I need to because he was a huge part of the early experience.
But all of those parts that we had yet to cast that only existed as Twitter accounts that the fans hadn't even found yet, that was all Jay.
Margaret was also in the room for every single episode. She directed 4 of them? I should have looked that up.
4 of them, yeah, I think so.
But before that, she was acting as script supervisor, making sure that our continuity was in order and making sure that I actually got all the words out. There were plenty of times that I improvised something, really paraphrased, really, like there were just so many words, and then I'd
many words.
Get through it, and I'd look over to Margaret and be like, was that close enough? And sometimes you would say, yeah, and sometimes you'd say, no, do it again. You didn't say this key part. But part of what why I'm also highlighting that you were in the room is because we have discussed on the show that people in the room were very, very few people. It was Bernie, it was Jason operating camera most of the time. Sometimes there was someone other than Jason operating camera, and you. When I remember the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, I remember my view.
Yes.
Which for most of it would be, especially in Jenny's little bedroom.
Yeah.
Like the
just
camera.
Me in that little corner right there. That was my spot.
On either side of corner, Bernie and Jason, and then you. Mm-hmm. And occasionally we had to like shove Julia into the corner so she could come around and pretend that she was operating from there, but then everyone else would come in behind me. And that was it. That was the total number of people in the room. And so you were in the room where it happened.
I was also at all the rehearsals, which was sort of...
You were.
That would be like, we'd run through all the episodes that we were shooting, in a couple of days at that point. And like that night I would do like the last pass of like, okay, this line is way too long. Probably because it was written by me, and we need to put it down into something that will come out of an actor's mouth and make sense. But just like if there was an emotional beat that wasn't quite working, or we thought we could do better on a joke, like I would generally do that pass and then send it to Bernie, and then he might take a look at it, and then it would go on to you, and we'd just be like, thank God that Ashley, would like take a day or two and just devote herself to memorizing all of those words, especially in the dialogue scenes where we tried not to have cuts, and it really became a thing for a while. It's like, look, if it's 2 people there, we have to do the whole thing in one take because this is what our conceit is.
It's the verisimilitude.
Verisimilitude, yep. And but it did mean, and I remember because I'm there literally with a pen running down the script, like so I can move us through like every time we're going through a line and mark if we've got it or if we don't. But we'd have like a 2-page long dialogue scene between 2 people, and like,
which is long for a scene in anything, like on anything recorded. In theater, scenes can be many, 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 many more pages, but in film, like a 3-page scene is a long scene.
Yeah, 2 pages. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's huge, especially when you have 2 people in pretty rapid fire dialogue, and
typically those are going to be shot, with you're going to have at least a medium and 2 close-ups to cut between, also a wide establishing. You're going to have like at least 4 angles to cut between, so you don't have to get everything in one take on a typical.
Exactly. Yeah, so we're trying to get the whole thing in our version of the master, which is also our close-up, which is also our medium shot, because we only have one shot on this show.
Yep.
And it just sort of like, I remember like going through with my pen for like, what color take is this? Just going through. It's like, as we start getting closer to the end of the scene, I just be like, come on. And you could just feel this thing of like, we got to pull this one out, guys. Because
that also happens in my actor brain sometimes, and that is inevitably when I mess up.
Yeah.
Like,
because you're not in the scene anymore.
If I get pulled out of myself enough to go, oh wow, we're almost at the end of the scene and we haven't messed up. Surprisingly, that's
guess what Lizzie is not thinking in this moment.
Okay, I could have these conversations with you forever, and I'm gonna just I'm gonna sprinkle your brilliance throughout the episodes that you appear in and save some of this good stuff. So I will have us watch an episode, yeah?
Yes.
So this is episode 11, The Charming Mr. Lee. We have talked about Bingley before, but they had dinner. All right, here we go. I literally watched episode 10 yesterday, and I still don't. I'm like, what's going on? I have to remember. My name is Lizzie Bennett, and Bingley just charmed the pants off everybody. That's good.
Oh,
I feel like there were a lot of those, like Lizzie hearing it and going like, that didn't come out right.
It's probably a certain amount of like the way my head works of just sort of getting halfway through a thought and then the next one starts.
Yeah, mine does too. I think that we are similar in that way, and that's why it worked well for Lizzie.
It is true. Our voices melded well on this.
It's very, very true. That is a this is so Margaret too, to be like, I'm gonna make a joke and then I'm just gonna point out that it doesn't work, and that's part of the joke too. Like, I will just hang a lantern on this.
Yes.
I feel like you had to write a lot of like whatever Mom's complicated plans were. I feel like you were responsible for figuring out a lot of like, how does this very complex update of something work?
How are we going to explain the connective tissue of what is going on to justify
of something that is just social convention in 1813, but not now?
Yeah, part of that is like some of those questions are the things that I find interesting, like, well, why would this person do this sort of thing that we need them to do, and can we come up with a retcon that makes sense? And also because I was sort of in that more senior position, I always felt like if we've got an episode that's just sort of like, we need to bridge between 2 exciting things, let me write that one, because it'll be easier for me to come up with a random thing as opposed to giving it to another writer and being like, I'm not sure what we need in this. Just come up with something.
You do have a lot more of the sort of like in between episodes, and it's such an interesting perspective that like you did that to serve the show. We talked over that so much that we weren't entirely listening to it.
I still don't know what happened in the episode.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that was maybe like not the best rewatch, but I think we had an interesting conversation. But I will point out that does have Charlotte doing just a great little burn on Jane with like, this is how Jane replies to everyone. Oh, hi, it's so good to see you. Because now that I recall, she's pointing out that and this is also straight out of the novel, straight P&P here. Charlotte pointing out that Bing may not know that she likes him because she acts, in P&P it's more that she's not overly enthusiastic, she's just kind of cool, chill, but here, you adapted that to like, she's just really nice to everybody, so it's hard to tell if you're special to her or...
Like, you can read Jane's mood because you know Jane really well, but if you just met her, it's sort of like, well, she was also nice to the mailman. That whole run, I think that was also one of the Charlotte audition scenes.
Oh, was it?
And I think in the original it went on even a little bit longer, for like the to the mailman, to the guy who walks your dog, to the whole thing. And it was one of the things that I learned as somebody who would write many scenes that would later be audition material. The actor, like the joke, it was too long. Like it didn't quite work. The actors who made it work anyway, like having that marginal joke, like if it's a really good line, anyone can sell a really good line. It's the ones that really made it work, even though it's like, God, is this joke still going on? And we still found it funny. It's like that is talent that we can exploit.
And that there is that element of like, no, you have to make this work. Like this is weird. What we're doing is weird, and you do have to like invest in the world and make this work, even though there is this kind of suspension of disbelief about it. And we definitely had people come in and obviously we had great people come in and nail it, and we had a lot of people come in and not be able to find that kind of sweet spot.
We were simultaneously weird but sincere.
Yes. Yes, it is a very sincere show. That's a great point. You also touched on this during the episode when you were saying that you and I overlap in some of our, it's not just a sense of humor.
It's a sort of similar cadence kind of mind feel, kind of,
a mind melt. But I don't know that the audience knows, which is where I just want to highlight this, how much the voice of Lizzie is Margaret. Not that like you are Lizzie, but that you are responsible for so much of the voice of Lizzie. Every writer wrote for Lizzie, obviously. I'm in almost all of the episodes. But when I think of like who among everyone like Lizzie sounds like, not the judgmental part, like not any of the negative things, but like who Lizzie sounds like, it's Margaret. There's so much of you in Lizzie, and I just want to make sure that the audience knows that, because it's so clear to me. That's one of the things about being behind the scenes, is just there's less visibility for all that you contributed to the show.
Yeah. Well, and I think it was, in some ways, it was also a little bit of a conscious choice. It was such an amazing project, because like it really was, you kind of alluded to this earlier, like it's a weird little show, but we had the right people on the right project at the right time. Like it really was just that lightning in a bottle. It was the right team, and everybody's sort of pieces fit that together. And I remember having one of those moments, especially when we got really popular from very early on. Like I think from early episodes, we would get 60,000 views between the Monday show and the Thursday show. Watching that fandom, emerge, which was amazing and beautiful, but also like having worked on TV shows that had fan bases and been in that kind of, in my case, had been on the science fiction fantasy sort of side of things, and being like,
tell them, they don't know anything about you, Margaret. Tell them what you had been doing before.
Before this, I was a baby TV writer. I got my first freelance episode of television on a little show called The Middleman. I was the writer's assistant on Eureka. I did a freelance episode over there. That was the background that I was bringing in when we started on Lizzie. And seeing fandom, I sort of made that call. I'd been to Comic-Con with shows and with our cast and all of that great stuff, and it was great. And I love our fans, like absolutely. But I also knew, it's like, look, if the fans ever decide that this show is going off the rails, like they're not going to be mad at the show, they're going to be mad at me for messing it up. And so like I love that they love what we're doing, but I think for my own mental health, I kind of had to take that break. I would absolutely look at beautiful comments, and they warm my heart, and I love that people love the show. And even the people who are like, this is like not my thing, it's like, you have the right not to like what we do. That's fine.
No one's forcing you to watch it.
But I really tried to make sure I was focused on doing the best work that I could do, and making sure that the experience was as positive as it could be for the writing staff, for the cast, just for everyone involved. At the end of the day, we're not getting paid enough to be miserable. We should behave ourselves professionally and take care of each other.
I do also want to highlight you really talked about creating a positive environment. I was just like trying to get through it all, right? And like I wasn't even I'm thinking specifically of the first day.
Oh yeah.
I didn't have time to even wonder if it was good. We just had to get through it, and it's also like not unusual on a film set for a director to just be ready to move on once they know they have it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, we've got it, moving on, next episode. And so I didn't even think that much about any of it until the end of the first day. You are the only person who said to me, hey, really good work today. And I was like, oh, that feels so nice.
Oh,
thank you.
If
you consistently, you always did that. You always gave me compliments, which sounds like, I didn't need the ego stroking, but it is really nice to just have all of your work acknowledged.
No, everybody should have feedback on their work, and everyone was doing a great job.
You also said to me at some point, I was welcoming, I guess probably like Jessica and Christopher, like our first new cast members on the show, and I didn't know anything about like top of show behavior. I don't even know that I'd heard the phrase before.
Oh yeah, number 1 on the call sheet.
I just wanted the show to be good, and I knew that what we were doing was weird and that it had taken me a little bit of time to get into. So when they joined the cast, I was like, just here's a bunch of stuff that helped me, and like, how can I help you make the show good, because that's what I cared about. But you pointed out to me, you said to me, hey, that was really excellent top of show behavior. You made them feel welcome and helped them be good on the show. And I was like, oh, that is part of my responsibility. But I didn't even, like, I wasn't consciously doing it. But then after that, I was able, because you called it out, I was able to consciously make sure, like, I am hosting them in a way on my show.
Yeah. Well, also you're a good person, and you wanted the show to do well, and you wanted them to feel good on the show.
Let's check in with the comments. Lots of Charlotte compliments in here. Charlotte, you're the super coolest Charlotte.
I have gone on record for a long time saying that I've always been a Charlotte partisan since I first read the story. So
you are also a big Julia Cho fan. I mean,
I am also a big Julia Cho fan.
Lily James says, speaking of things that aren't worth anyone's time, can we go back to talking about Darcy? Methinks the lady doth protest too much. Indeed, as I have pointed out many times.
Almost like they saw where our story was going from the beginning.
Lots of jumping on the, it's so good to see you. And yeah, they like it. How about that? That's what I get from those comments. Which means that they like you, because you brought so much to the show. You are also the writer credited with writing the most number of the Lizzie Bennet Diaries.
It is true. I wrote a plurality of episodes for the Lizzie Bennet Diaries.
Well, and you did the pass after her rehearsal. I feel like you weren't given enough credit for that. Because
partially me helping the team, and partially me being a control freak and being like, no, I can do a good job on this.
But see, those are also places where, like, we relate. I want to be helpful, but also I would like to be in charge, because then it'll be my way.
And then I know that I will be happy with the way this turns out.
And I know that I'll like it because I did it. Well, so fantastic to have you here and let them in a little bit on how great you are. And stay tuned. Margaret will be back, and we'll learn more great Margaret things. For extended episodes with tea and bonus content, check out my Patreon.